This video is for anyone who has sat in their church pew, surrounded by people, talked to people, but felt alone. But also this video is for people who don't understand that concept. How can you be surrounded by people who, how can you be surrounded by people but feel alone at the same time? Those are the people, especially, you need to be the ones to listen, okay? So let me tell you about my experiences the past 7 months especially, but really the past couple of years. I see myself as more of an outgoing person. I try to do my best to reach out to new people that I see and to welcome people who I haven't seen in a while. I check up on people who may not be coming to church if they're okay. I was a deacon for about over 5 years, we'll say that, and with that, you do a lot of things. You help. You just do extra little things. I'm not saying like we did stuff all the time, but I was consistently helping with things. Now, 7 months ago, I left my job at a physical therapy clinic to open my own clinic. This was not a pre-planned situation. This was I need to get out. And I'm not going to another clinic. I'm not going through this again. I need to start my own clinic. Now, when you are opening your own clinic or just starting your own business, it's a leap. It's a leap of faith of like, I hope there's demand there for what I'm going to offer. I hope there are people who are going to be there to guide me and help me. So I took that leap. Now, I imagine the situation kind of like whenever you're swinging on a trapeze. You're swinging from one side and you have a partner on the other side who's supposed to grab your hands and swing you over back to safety. When I reached out, the trapeze was empty. And from that leap, I started to fall. So what that looks like was I didn't realize how much I was pouring into other people, but there was no reciprocity. And so those relationships started to crumble. And so I kept falling and falling and falling. And emotionally, I felt very alone. But, with you having a church family, having deep friendships, strong friendships, you kind of have a safety net that's supposed to catch you. But once I was supposed to hit that safety net, I realized that it wasn't there. And so I continued to fall into a deep, deep depression. Very dark place in my life. And I had nothing else left to pour from my cup for other people. I had no energy to continue to help, to do the extra things that you should do as a deacon or as just a human being, as a Christian person. I didn't have the ability to do that anymore. And I felt like there was nobody there to pick me up. Now, this story isn't a woe is me sort of thing. I had people that were there who did help. My wife especially, she has been amazing through this entire process of starting the clinic. And, but there's only so much one person can do whenever you're raising 3 kids, 3 very neurodivergent kids, and trying to keep me from a very dark, deep depression. There's only so much you can do as one individual. So once I hit rock bottom, I started to question my faith. I started to question a lot of things. Now, I do woodworking, so I was building a lot of things in my clinic, and I was working on a lot of stuff. And there was a point where I had seen an old phone holder that I made for my wife, and it had ended up in the garage because it was like 8 years old. It was made out of this really beautiful wood called wingy, and it's black. It's really, really beautiful. And she had put a sticker on it. And the scripture said, God never sends you into a situation alone. He goes before you, stands beside you, and walks behind you. The thing is, at that point, I had never felt the most alone as I did then. And I'd gone into such a blind rage. And before I knew it, I had smashed that thing into the ground. And I got a hammer and I started smashing that thing into the tiniest bits that I feel like I could have. I kept hitting it and hitting it and hitting it because I was so angry with God at that point that, like, you're such a liar, because I have never been so alone in my life. And you've sent me into a situation alone. Like, how can you say these things? Now, given I know this is a saying, but there was another scripture on there that said, where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them. And I was like, my friends are gone. I don't feel like there was anybody there for me. Now, that scripture had been completely obliterated, but this is what's left of the other part. And as I looked at this afterwards, this is how fragile I felt. I can break this very easily. Now, for the visual people, I want you to look at this and imagine this is how emotionally unstable I felt. This is how emotionally fragile I felt. Now, if I took who I was at that moment, my faith, and I handed it to you and basically told my story of, like, this is where my faith is right now, how do you think the response of, well, you should pray about it, how do you think that would feel? That would snap me. Or, I'm sorry you're feeling like that. Or, have you tried praying about it? Or, I'll pray for you. How emotionally fragile that I wouldn't trust a single person with this. And so what you do in church is you smile. How are things going? All right. See how good am I at that? I'm fine. How's the business? Oh, it's going. It's growing. This is something called masking, where you have a lot going on. You want to talk about it, but you know people don't give a shit. So you put on a face, smile, because you've worked on that in the mirror. This is something that comes from neurodivergence. Some of us are really good at it. Apparently, I had fooled all the elders too. But the thing is, behind this mask, there's a lot going on. But we're not going to open up unless you really care. Unless you really ask, unless you start to dig, unless I can trust you with this, will I not open up? Now, when I was at church, things started to feel more painful. When we were starting to sing songs where God is going to be there for me, God is always seeking you, God is pursuing you, I started to not believe it. And with the people who were around me, those relationships falling apart, that if I'm being cast aside, what I felt like a piece of trash and stepped on like a piece of trash, you start to believe that you're a piece of trash. I don't know if I had said before, but I left. Because when you go to a place that's supposed to be a place of healing, it turns into pain, and it makes things worse. So I lost my faith at that point. I stepped down as deacon. I didn't go back for a while. Now, through the midst of everything, there was a moment where I was, pouring into what I had left, which was into my family. And there was a night where my son, who was very ADHD and the funniest, sweetest kid that you've ever met, he did not want to go to bed. I get it. That's me every night. I don't want to go to bed. But I had to physically carry him up, and he's 8 now. Put him in his bed, and he was just thrashing, throwing everything off the bed, throwing around pillows, taking sheets off, and just balled up and was just crying, screaming. And so I sat on the couch next to him, or just the little chair we have. I sat there and I just watched him. And in that moment, it hit me that that's what God was doing. That he was letting me throw a little hissy fit about leaving my work. He was letting me just throw everything around, be angry and be upset. But he knew I was safe. I didn't like it. I didn't want to do it, but I did. And so after I was done throwing my hissy fit about things, because I didn't want to leave my work. I didn't want to leave. I loved where I worked. I loved the people that were around me, but the situation wasn't good. So I am now in a better place at my work. I work with people who have hypermobility. I work with people who are in chronic pain, people who are constantly gaslit, who are constantly doubted, who are ignored. And I feel that experience, and I feel like I can identify with them a lot more since the situation. Now, this isn't a happy ending like, oh, everything's fine now. I still don't trust people, especially Christians. Sounds terrible, but it's true. And you wonder why people are leaving in droves from the church, because there is this two-sidedness to many, many people. And the neurodivergent community especially is tired of your bullshit. Tired of it. Sick of it. We don't want to be around it. We're tired of people just talking and saying, like, the scripture says this, we should do this and this and this. Like, well, why don't you actually do something? And that's one thing that my church has not done. They have not done anything about the things that I have reported to them. Nothing. I was visited by several different elders in the midst of everything, and I appreciated the time they took. The advice they gave me wasn't helpful, and I haven't heard from them since. Now, several months ago. So when your goal is to get me back in the pew, you got it. I sit back in the pew. There may be a song that I sing, but my body is there, but my heart's not. I'm an empty husk of a person when I go there. Most of the time, I can't even make it to the sermon before I have to stop and I have to leave. None of this is to point fingers at this person messed up, you should do this better. I want to bring validation to the people who feel this, because you're not alone, and you don't have to deal with this. You can still have a relationship with God. You can still have a relationship to Jesus. You don't need the people, is what I've kind of learned from this whole thing. Now, Jesus, when I say his name, there's a lot of people who just cringe at hearing that, because the word that we pour out is Jesus all the time, but we lose the spirit of who Jesus is. He's a man who stood up for the people who weren't being listened to. He drew in the children whenever they were the ones who were cast out from society. He listened to the people who were sick and diseased. He was the one who touched people who were the untouchables. He called out the bullshit of the Pharisees. He was so true. He was true to who he was. There was no underlying thing that he was trying to go for. There was no lying. And that's what we need. We need truth. And he loved every single person. And whenever he called people out for doing dumb, stupid things or selfish things, he called them out because he loved them. He loved them, and he wanted them to come closer to him, not to just yell at them or just because they're doing something wrong. He wanted them to come back to him. If anything, from you who have been feeling alone, you can at least have a relationship with Jesus in this. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to feel like this. And again, for those people who don't understand the whole situation of like, well, why didn't you just reach out? Why didn't you just say something? I did. I told many people I was struggling. I was hurting. People did pray for me. But then I was just forgotten after a while. When people stop checking in on you or listening, and I get people get busy. But when are we going to stop getting busy? When do the people that are hurting get priority? I don't know. I'm still building back. I'm still figuring things out. I don't have enough energy to leave my church to find something else, because I don't have enough faith that the people there, wherever I go, aren't going to do the same thing. That's where I'm at. I still pray. At my clinic, I've prayed with more people than I ever have at church. In the past couple months, I prayed with more people than I ever have at the church. I've been there for over 10 years. Now, again, this is not a woe is me story. This is not a have pity on me thing. I just need to get the words out. I just needed to talk it out, where this is the way that some people are going to listen, because we're too afraid to approach anybody. Too afraid to ask, how are you doing? Too afraid to follow up. Yeah. And I feel like I'm very very connected with my emotions and feelings, and I know enough to be aware of what my body's going through. But I want to also have a little word of advice, word of warning for people who may have dismissed a lot of people in the past. I am able to put my feet on Jesus and to have him as my foundation. It's not a bad foot on Jesus. Have Jesus as my foundation. But the people who have completely lost faith, they're the ones who end up killing themselves. Because depression, this emotional pain that you feel is pain. It's physically painful. And when you feel alone, when you feel like such trash, then you're like, well, if I'm trash, I'm just going to put myself in the garbage then. And I see it time and time again of people are just surprised, like, oh, how did that happen? Why are they seem fine. It's called masking. I'm fine. It's okay. I'm good. Because no one really digs. No one tries to look behind the mask or recognizes that there is a mask. You'll need to start digging.